evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Wednesday Night Photo Show. It's been a couple of weeks, but we're back here for our weekly chat about all things photography and what's going on and all kinds of other good stuff. So, my name is Scott. I'm the main photo instructor here at Dan's Camera City, and tonight we've got somebody new with us. I'd like you all to meet Matt. What is your title exactly?
My title exactly. I guess I would be head photographer for photo operations. So school photos, photo ops, senior photos, and studio services, basically.
Okay, so a whole bunch of picture taking stuff.
Many hats.
Yeah, many hats. So I think the thing that we were talking about is even for a lot of people who maybe have been photographers for a long time and are pretty experienced photographers, it can be kind of tough when you're trying to take pictures of people. This is it's different than when I'm trying to, I don't do a lot of people pictures, right? I do a lot of landscapes and I do a lot of night photography and I like some macro and street photography and all kinds of other stuff, but I'm the guy with the camera, right? So whenever there's a family event, hey, you take our picture.
Right. And that happens a lot. So I stopped taking my camera to family events a long time ago, but it's a totally different animal in portrait photography. Like you said, flowers and landscapes and they're pretty much there and they don't move and you don't really have to direct them. Or in the case of, like kids, they're not running around sticking pine cones up their nose or something like that when you're trying to take a picture. So yeah, it's a completely different. In addition to photography skills, you really do need good people skills. But more importantly, it's all about making your subject comfortable and relax so that you can get natural smiles and not that faked, forced, I'm standing here all stiff because somebody told me to smile type of look,
Yeah, I see a lot of those, okay, we're going to take the group picture. Everybody stand in a line and smile when I say cheese. Right.
Yeah, it's like a group mugshot kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
So definitely want more natural looking photography. And it's just, you're trying to capture a memory and you look at some of those photos where everyone's standing in a line and it's like, man, that doesn't look like it was a happy event going on there. So you're trying to make things a little bit more exciting and friendly.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I don't know about everybody else, but I'm starting to see family that I haven't seen in better than a year now. Right, we're starting to get together and we're starting to plan. We're going to get together. And we're going to have some picnics. We're going to have some get-togethers, and we haven't in a while. And so
you need
now,
photos because you don't know what those people they change so much. I know my own kids personally; they look nothing like they looked like a year ago. So,
yeah, for sure. So, all right. So, with the idea that we're going to be out, we're going to be seeing other people. It's time to get some pictures. So, let's talk about how we're going to get some nicer looking pictures than the standard mugshot. Or maybe I got a nephew who just got his black belt and I want something other than the standard grip and grin. Here's me standing here holding my certificate. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for anybody else who's watching, we've got a bunch of people who are joining us tonight, which is great to see. As always, throw a comment in Facebook or in YouTube. We can throw those up on the screen and we can answer them live as we're rolling along through the show here tonight. So I guess first up, I'm out. I'm at a family event and I want to get a couple of nice looking pictures. Not really a posed thing per se, but where do I start with this? What's my first? Because I think what I've seen you do out at some events is this starts for you before you even pick up the camera. You were talking about making people comfortable. I watched you out taking pictures with Santa.
Right.
And you're working with the kids in the line before they even get up there.
Yeah. The idea is in a situation like that, the photography shouldn't even be in the subject's mind. You want them to get the natural reactions and the interactions and things like that. And if they're focusing on a camera or, the photographer, then they're going to lose that. So, trying to establish a connection right off the bat, playing with the kids, interacting with the kids, or family members for that matter. And I think the benefit would be hopefully, most of your family, so you can kind of not have to worry too much about that part of it. But I would say go into it with a plan is the first thing you want to do. I mean, even if it's like a candid event where there's going to be photography happening, maybe, during your introductions and how you doing, haven't seen you in forever, how was COVID for you, maybe, hey, we'd like to do a group photo later. Like, just start letting people get it in their mind, so it's not that total surprise. You have Uncle Eddie in the corner who's like got the shocked look on his face because, wait, we're doing a photo now? So you want to try to get it in their minds early that, hey, we're going to be doing this later, so let's just keep it in mind.
Right, just kind of plant that seed ahead of time.
Correct. Yeah. And again, keep it always friendly and nice.
Yeah.
And then also, like, where you're at, keep in mind the location where your gathering is going to be. Start scouting out some ideas of where you want to take the photo. Some basic things is, obviously you don't want it in bright sunlight if you can avoid that, because everybody's always squinty or blinking.
Right. Okay.
You also don't want a crazy busy background, especially if you're photographing a large group of people. It's already going to be busy enough. So try to find a more neutral, relaxed background where there's not a lot going on.
Okay.
Also, if you have any kind of, posing props available to you, it could be a picnic table, it could be chairs, it could be, a rock garden somewhere, something where you can kind of use, so it gives people an opportunity to put them in positions where they're not just standing there, and you can maybe almost kind of stack them up and build them like Legos into your pose.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen, like, looking at some of the pictures that you've shared with us. Like, rather than having things in a line, you've broken things up. Right. And that line is, and I guess
it's very important as well. Yeah, it's very important not to think in squares. Especially when you're posing, when groups and stuff like that, I always try to think triangles. It just makes it a little bit more, appeasing to the eye, and it's just kind of makes it a little bit more interesting than just your standard square pose, and makes it not blocky looking at all.
Okay. Triangles. Interesting. All right.
We'll show you some examples then.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So, all right. So then I've kind of planted the seed that, okay, we're going to be doing some pictures. I'm kind of scouting around. I'm looking for locations. Right. Then you said you don't want a busy background. I assume you don't want people like right up against the background. It sort of looks like that, lining them up against the wall kind of thing.
Right. Example, like a lot of people tend to use, trees for backgrounds. But the one thing with like trees too is when you ultimately pose everybody next to the trunk and you take a picture, are you seeing the tree, or are you just seeing a bunch of people standing next to a trunk? So it's things like that. Like, yes, you maybe want to use the tree for the shade purposes, but they don't have to be standing right up against it. You can move them further away from the tree so they're still in the shade, but now you're actually using the tree as your background.
Okay.
Another point would be like, too, especially with families, try to find a background, if it's not busy, something that has some kind of meaning to it. One of the photos I have later was like, I'll show you later. It's a father and his two daughters, and the background was their beautiful house that they grew up in. Like, that's where their memories were made. So we used the house itself as the background.
It becomes part of the picture, and then part of that memory.
Exactly. But yeah, so those are some helpful, ideas there.
Okay. All right. So what do we want to take out? Okay. So we've set the scene. Now, I guess now it's time to like take some pictures of people.
Absolutely.
We got to start like wrangling the people at the picnic and, I don't know, drag them away from the ribs. And
yeah, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. So one thing I would always suggest is think about who we're taking photos of. What's the main goal? An event of like a family reunion, for example, the main goal is probably your big everybody together photo. What I usually kind of do when I'm in those type of situations is I will start off with the matriarch or the patriarch, or the two people that are responsible for this big giant group of people. So usually the great grandparents or the grandparents or something along those lines. From that point, I usually try to break it down. I have everybody split off into their family units. So mom and dad and your 3 kids over here, and this mom and dad and your 2 kids over here, and Uncle Joey, you're single, so you just stand over there in the corner by yourself. And again, it's that kind of just joking around where, you're also helping create a relaxed atmosphere. There's always that one person in the family that everybody likes to pick on, and I usually pick out who that person is pretty quick and just kind of use that as my target. Sometimes that's the best way to get people to smile, if you just crack a joke. All in good taste, of course. But so once I have my groups broken down, then we start building. We always start with, the matriarch. Generally, they don't always have to be in the center, but we like to put them in the center because, like, again, they're responsible for everything. And then I bring them in.
Kind of revolves around them.
Correct. Yeah. And then from that point, I bring them in family at a time. So you're really, when you're doing the posing and the positioning, you're only working with a small number of people, as opposed to, hey, all you 50 people, just come on in here and get in wherever you want. It gives you a little bit more control. And also, like, it helps you see, like, you know, you have that one kid who's a little crazy and needs to be held a little tight. Well, all right, we're going to know to keep that family. They're the last ones we're going to put in the picture, because he's not going to sit there while I'm posing 10 other people.
Okay, so like, you know, he's not going to sit there long, so you're going to use him for the shortest amount of time.
Absolutely.
Just bring it at the end.
Yeah, really is. You're evaluating people the whole time. Like, when you're in that position and you're looking at it, like, all right, I know, you know, little Johnny over here is not going to sit for more than 30 seconds. And, you know, Sarah, the teenager over here, is going to be on her phone. You know, she's getting annoyed because she needs to check her Instagram status or whatever. So, you know, you got to kind of evaluate that kind of stuff and kind of take it as you go. And then, so basically, like I said, you just start building from there. One thing, you always want to try to keep your family units together that belong together. You know, I mean, sometimes when you're posing people and, you know, you have one larger family and one smaller family, you know, for the sake of balancing out the photo, you might move a couple kids over, but then they don't really belong to, you know, those parents. So you want to try to keep that stuff in mind, how to balance out the photo and not make it too heavy on one side or the other, but yet the family unit people belong together.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So that's kind of a general approach to, like, rank, because I've run into that before, right? Like, you got the 50 people and now you're herding cats.
Right. Exactly.
I like that, like having a plan for kind of working through that in stages.
The nice thing with that too is, the nice thing with that too is then, like, after you get your big group shot, you already have your smaller groups pretty much already ready to go. And so you can do one big giant photo and then everybody just stay where you are. And then you, as the photographer, it's a lot easier for you to move and change positions than it is to move the 20 people that you just posed. So, you know, you can maybe say, hey, this family, just take 2 steps back and let me just photograph this family. And now, all right, you guys come over here 2 more steps and we're going to photograph this family. So now you're breaking it down and you're getting your smaller groups, but they're already, for the most part, posed and ready to go, and it saves you a lot of time and gives you a lot better pictures too.
Right. So then everybody can get back to the ribs.
Exactly.
Battles finding portrait. Oh, we got a comment here. Finding portrait photographers who help customers feel more comfortable. Dance Studio did a professional for us in the past. Oh, well, thank you. That's great.
Awesome. Good to hear.
But yeah, I guess that's that, making people feel comfortable and keeping everybody kind of relaxed, because that does feel like half the battle, right? Like, getting a natural pose out of people is going to be.
It is. And when I say the word pose, I don't actually like to pose people or give them posing instructions, because when you say things like that, it makes them get all stiff and they think they have to be, you know, like all prim and proper, but you just want them to look natural. You know, another thing that you see a lot is when you try to put a person in a position that the dads, for example, like, I see photos where there's, you know, dads and they have their legs, they're sitting like, you know, crisscross applesauce, as they would say. I haven't seen a dad sit like that in nature in ever. Like, it doesn't happen. All right. So, like, you know, you don't want to, it's little things like that you want people to be comfortable. You want people to be relaxed, especially if you don't know how long they're going to be standing there for too. Like, you know, you don't want them to be in a position where it's like, all right, turn your head to the side and then put your arm up, and then, you know, like, and then they got to stand there for 20 minutes. You know, you got to make it relaxed and easy for them so they give you a nice, good smile.
Or like sit there on the ground, and how long are your middle-aged knees going to hold out?
Exactly. Or as the photographer, how long can I stand on my knees and take the photo too? So.
All right. So, all right. Did you want to walk us through some of this stuff? You want to take a look at some pictures?
I can show you some photos here real quick. So these are all generally, you know, families that I photographed over the years, different areas, not necessarily in, like, you know, the, you know, family reunion styles, but, you know, around the Lehigh Valley. Again, using the environment, like this first photo, you know, yes, they are in a line, like we said, try not to do, but, you know, we're utilizing the environment, and it's a fun photo. It's a casual photo, and you can have fun with it. Same thing, you know, In this case, kids having a good time in the background. It's the family. That's what you're trying to show off. Those are the memories you're trying to make. You're trying to photograph, like I said, it's not just taking pictures of faces. You're trying to capture, reactions and people making memories.
Mm-hmm. And I see that it's not in a straight line, right? Like there's some kind of dynamic to, like, if you draw a line, connect the dots with the heads.
Right. And that's what I was kind of talking about earlier when I was saying triangles. Like it's not a square box. So like, you can connect dad's head over to the mom's head and then down to the oldest son's head and back up, and you have a triangle in there. It's not a square. It's a little bit more, artistic to the eye. It's not boring. It's interesting. It's a little bit more fun like that. We didn't really talk about using props and stuff like that, but sometimes it's fun to kind of throw some props in here. This is a family that you'll see some of the photos later. I actually started with the very first maternity photos, and we've gone up through, and this was, 10 years after we started, we did a fun photo there with everybody together.
Oh, neat.
So just kind of some fun stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Again, just kind of like, again, thinking of the triangles there. It's not just a square, but you're building it. Everybody's visible. One thing I like to do too is, not all the photos have to be where you're looking at the camera. Those natural moments, those fun moments, those, when, you crack a joke at Uncle Joey and everybody just starts laughing, like that's the picture that you want. So, as a photographer, one thing whether you're, just at a family reunion, taking pictures for yourself or working, for a family, always be ready, because the best photos are the ones that happen when, you're not saying, okay, everybody 1, 2, 3, smile. It's when you're not paying attention and the people are just goofing around is when you get the best photos and the best reactions.
Yeah. Like nobody in that picture is looking at the camera, but they're all looking at each other, and there's such a sense of connection between the people in the picture.
Absolutely. From, like the mom holding the hand to the oldest son looking over. I mean, it definitely, it's that moment that you're trying to capture and create.
Right. Now, how much do you direct that? Or was that just kind of you're just looking for that shot?
A little bit, and sometimes the direction, it's not even like, they don't even realize they're getting directions. Especially when you're working with kids, you're almost tricking them in a way. Like, for example, the photo that's, on the screen right now, it was trying to get the little one to, kiss his sister. Well, that's not going to happen. But, you could say something to the boy like, hey, is there a bug crawling in your sister's ear? And they lean over to look for it. And that's when you get that shot. So but again, that all starts too in the very beginning when you start playing with the kids and joking around with the family members and stuff like that. So they're used to it by then. So when you start joking around and say, hey, what's that over there? Is that a bug over there? And everybody turns and heads and looks, you get the shot and you're ready for it. You're directing, but
I really like that. That's interesting. So but in a much more subtle way.
Correct. Yeah. It's not direction. You're one of them and you're just joking around, having a good time, basically.
Yeah.
So here's an example, like I was saying earlier, with like the bigger families and stuff like that, where you start with your matriarch and your patriarch in the middle kind of thing, and you build the families around them. Again, in this case, not a very busy background, but we're also utilizing the fence, as a prop for people to sit on. Obviously you have the cute little baby in the center, and you're building everybody around, but all the couples belong together and everybody's nice and happy. And then it's easy to break those down into the smaller couples then too. They're there, they're easy to go, and you can move right into those small couples.
Right. So, just everybody take a couple of steps apart, and I can photograph you, and then I can photograph you, and then I can photograph you.
Yeah. So it saves.
But I really like how that previous one was all built around, like, I didn't see it until you pointed it out, but there's the baby right in the middle.
Yep.
Who is probably completely the center of attention.
Right. First grandchild. Yeah. You got to get that in there.
But it's not all aligned. There's so much,
right?
Like the line, the connect to the dots just kind of snakes across there.
Correct. And it's that whole, if you look at it closely, connecting dots with heads, you got the little triangles in there. It's not just one big line across. But even though it's a big giant family, you can easily figure out the smaller family units as well. So, you're a big family unit, but you all still maintain your own personality and fun. And usually like you said, when you start off, like, one of the questions we talked about, like when you're planning your session or planning your event, what's the main goal? And, it's obviously we want a big photo of everybody. I kind of consider that the boring shot. So I always say get that one first, because, you want to do that while everybody still relatively has an attention span going on, especially with the little kids. Before everybody starts to get cranky because it's hot and they just want to go back to the barbecue ribs or whatever. So you want to get that shot first. And then once you have that, again, evaluating which kid's melting down first, or, that kind of stuff, then you break it into your smaller family groups. But then you can also have some fun with it. Like I said, family portraits don't have to be all, everybody standing in a line having a good time. Like we had the little baby up on the shoulders, and I was like to the other girls, I was like, go ahead, jump up on your significant other too. Go ahead, have some fun there. So you want to make it fun. It doesn't have to be that
everybody gets a piggyback ride.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be that standard, nice portrait on the wall. Like it could be something fun. Absolutely. This is the one I was talking about with the house in the background. So it was just a nice little, family moment, daughters with their dad type of thing.
Yeah, but I see what you mean. Like that's, like, to me, I don't make that connection. Like, okay, they're sitting there in front of a house, but when they see that picture, that means something entirely different to them, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not just the them together, but it's the memories that they created in that place. Absolutely.
Right. So the house is another character in the picture.
Absolutely. And again, just having fun with it. Why not? Adults can climb trees too, right?
Yeah. There's that triangle again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't always have to be that, like, just stand there and look at the camera and smile like in a straight line. You can one of, like we were talking about, how do you give directions and stuff like that? Well, give her a hug. How long have you guys been married? 40 years. Give her a hug. She deserves it. And those are the things that, like I always make a joke, and I said it probably all the time. I'm like, pretend like you like one another. It's one of those things that it gets a joke out of everybody. They start laughing, and you get some good natural photos there. Again, with the kids, you're trying to, doesn't have to be looking at the camera. I mean, anybody who's a parent will tell you that kids, anything you want a child to do, they're going to do the complete opposite. So, as a photographer trying to give kids directions, it does not work. You almost have to play a game with them and let them do what they want to do. And, you can do certain things like, oh, hey, look at that leaf. Is there any bugs crawling on that leaf? Again, going back to the bugs, kids love bugs. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to get, and those are the special moments where, it's not just your typical, like I said, look at the camera and smile, but it's a moment that you really captured and people are going to really enjoy it. It's not just a portrait. You suddenly made art with it,
So for the parents in the audience, do you run into a different dynamic between like photographing your kids versus like photographing other people's kids? Like, I imagine that's got to work out differently for the photographer.
So I have no photos of my kids in the slideshow. A couple years ago, we did a family vacation where we went down to Washington, D.C. And after like the first hour of trying to get like, hey guys, look at the camera and smile, I went with a different tactic of, guys, turn around and look at that monument. So all of the photos were just like my kids from the back looking at a monument. And, it was kind of neat in an artsy kind of way. But yeah, I've just gotten to the point where my kids know it's more fun for them to mess with dad and make stupid faces than it is for them to actually smile and get a nice photo. So yes, I do get along with other kids, other families better. Yeah,
there's a real different dynamic there, I imagine.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to have patience with other people's kids than it is your own sometimes.
Yeah, fair.
Let's see. So this isn't exactly a family reunion, it's a wedding, but again, it's that same idea of, breaking it down into smaller groups, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your standard, let's all make a straight line and, kind of go from there. So this is just another example of, using your environment, finding some props, positioning people in areas that they don't need to be standing right together. But yeah, you could still break down all the different couples, and it's, makes it a little bit more interesting.
look how much personality is in this picture, though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
it's
everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
it's broken up and everybody's in different layers, and there's a lot going on. Like, it's a very dynamic picture, but it's also like I get so much personality out of this shot. Like, this is clearly like this couple, like, and their crew,
Right.
hanging out.
It definitely captured the vibe of everybody at the wedding that day. So that, kind of fun.
So was there a lot of direction for, like, okay, you lay here and you put your feet up, or was it just like kind of let you go nuts? Or
Yeah, for that one, I
some of
pretty
both?
much I started off with like where I wanted them, but I totally let them each do their own thing. And then with an environment like a wedding, you have a little bit more, ability to kind of fine tune things a little bit more. But for the most part, it was like, all right, you're going to go here and do your thing, and you're going to go over here and you do your thing, and we just kind of mixed it up a little bit.
And there's a lot of different poses, but nobody looks stiff. Everybody looks loose and relaxed and comfortable.
And the other key thing is too, I think nobody's really stealing the show. You know what I mean? Like, they're all pretty equal in terms of like you have your focus on the bride and groom, and everybody else is just pretty much, yep, we're all equal here.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes with the kids too, I mean, you really just need to let them just roll around on the ground and play. And you know what I mean? Like, sometimes those are the best shots you're going to get. And especially when it comes to kids, as the photographer, like before I kind of mentioned how you want to like use the space, it's easier for the photographer to move around than it is to move all the people. When you're photographing kids, one thing I will definitely suggest is get down to their level. Not only physically, but mentally get down to their level. You need to think you got to think like a kid.
Yeah. Okay.
As a 5-year-old, if you can remember that back, far back, you're not going to listen to somebody when they're like, okay, turn your head just a little bit to the left, or turn your head. All right. Now hold still. Like, you're not going to do that. So, a lot of times when dealing with kids, you just kind of let them do their thing. And also let them feel like they're in charge, like take 1 or 2 pictures and then tell the kid, like, all right, how do you want to pose? What do you want to do? And sometimes those are the best shots when they start hamming it up for you.
Right. So they get to like feel like they're participating in the process. This is not just some other grown up telling them what to do.
Absolutely. Yes. Let them feel like they're a part of the process. That's the best way to say it, because it makes it interesting for them. Attention span of a child is like that. So, anything you can do to keep that attention span just a little bit longer. So when you're out and you're photographing and you get a nice shot of mom and the kid, and you can even see there already, he's kind of getting a little, mom's got a little tight grip on him because he's starting to get a little antsy. Yep. Then it's time to, all right, you know what, let's go for a little walk and let him walk and get another shot. Let him work some of that energy off. And then 10 seconds later, he's relaxed a little bit and you get another good shot. So it's all about give and take with the kids.
Wow. I mean, that walking shot, it's a great picture by itself. And I had not really thought about it as like, this is the thing that we do to like burn off some energy. I mean, it's a fantastic picture, but I didn't think about like, it's got a utility to it.
Right. And like I said, as a photographer, you always got to be ready for that kind of stuff, because you never know when it's going to happen. Just another example of, getting down to the kid's level. Like, if it means laying on the ground right next to him, then that's what you got to do sometimes. Like,
roughly how far are you from them in this case? What kind of if we can digress on lens choice for a little bit here, what are we doing?
So usually, like if I'm working with a small group or, like a couple or something like that, even individual portraits, I mean, my go-to is usually like a 70 to 200 type of lens.
Okay.
The one thing using a wide angle up close is usually not a good idea, because you're going to get like crazy distortion and just blows out proportions and makes the nose look big and things like that. There's a time and a place for a wide angle. If you're 20 feet up on a ladder photographing a group of 120 people, then a wide angle might help you out there. But when you're dealing with like the smaller families and the smaller portraits, like I usually, like I said, use the 70 to 200. I also have a 24 to 105 that I use a lot. It gives you an opportunity to get close. So like if you have to run in and make a quick adjustment, you're not yelling, you're close enough that they can hear instructions. That's the most important thing, especially when working with a group. You want to make sure that everybody hears you, is focused on you, and can understand what you're saying. I usually try to be very specific when I'm giving instructions, especially working like in a large group. You don't want to just say, okay, you move over 2 feet, because everybody's going to move over 2 feet. So, make sure you're using specific names if you know them, grandpa, I need you to keep looking here, and things like that. And even with the kids, like a good suggestion is everybody just keep looking at me. Don't worry about the kids. I'll focus on the kids. There's many a time where it's like you have, 10 adults and like 2 little kids, and, you're running up just to get the little kids' attention, and the dad's looking off in the corner at, somebody mowing the grass across the street or something like that. So it's important that the adults are looking at you. Also, when you have a group of kids, if you're photographing like several kids, and that's one of the most challenging things, because you usually means you have all of the parents standing right behind you. And the parents don't stand right behind the camera. They kind of spread out. And what happens is you have 6 different people all calling their kids, and every kid's looking in a different direction, like trying to look at their parents. So a good advice, if you're trying to photograph a large group of kids, is designate one person to help you out, and everybody else has to zip it and go away. It just makes it so much easier to keep the focus of the kids looking forward. It's little tips and tricks like that.
How do the parents take that when you tell them to zip it?
Usually at that point, they just want a good photo. So most times they'll you say it in a nice way, of course.
Right.
Like, hey guys, I think there's more ribs on. Can you go get some more ribs? And then, sometimes when you throw animals into the mix, it just makes it that much harder.
Yeah.
Again, so you gotta, it's a balancing act of, do you get real creative here because you have an uncooperative subject? In this case, it was the dog, or do you just kind of hope and get what you want? But you can still make it interesting.
Nice. Okay. So, using kind of the props that are available. And again, I guess that's scouting out the location ahead of time and figuring out, what, if I put people here, all these leading lines are going to point right at them. And I got this nice splash of color in the background.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some great spots around the Lehigh Valley, that people go to, if you want big family portraits and stuff like that. But, most times you're in the backyard, and it is what it is, and you just make it the best of the moment. And like I said, if you focus on trying to make it that real moment, that, in the moment of everybody having a good time and being natural and not forced, and it just makes such a great photo. Honestly, people want the memories. It's not about how straight in a line everybody was standing. It's kind of...
Oh, nice. So what are you looking at for light here? Because now we've got like where you typically might post somebody where the light is kind of shining on them. These people are kind of backlit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, generally, like I said, on sunny days, I try not to have people standing in the sun because it's hot. They squint. You're not going to get, good lights. I try to find shadows. Shadows can even be a little tricky sometimes with like trees, because you got to watch for those hot spots poking through.
Oh, like the little dappled light that comes through.
Right. And of course, it's always going to be, you're going to have 9 people looking great and 1 person that's just all washed out. So you got to watch for things like that. Generally, when I'm working outside on location like this, I try to find a spot where the sun's, more behind the subjects. I always, time of day is important, in summer months like now, anytime from like 4:30 to 6 is usually pretty ideal for outside portrait weather or portrait lighting. But again, you just kind of make it work. If you can throw a fill flash on it, awesome. That's the way to do it. But a lot of times, you're just working with what you have, especially when you're on a location in someone's backyard and things like that. And it's kind of impromptu. And then, sometimes you can get creative and use bright sunlight to your advantage,
nice.
Don't have to necessarily see the photos all the time in a family, or the faces in a family photo.
Yeah, that's very cool. What was the impetus to go with black and white here?
I think it was just for the silhouette, just to kind of make the simplicity of it all. You're just trying to kind of show, in this case, just the closeness of the family. I didn't really want it to distract too much. I like the way that the family was just holding hands and the little baby was just kind of poking his head out of the dad's shoulder there. And it just worked out nice. And I just really kind of wanted to just focus in on that.
So it kind of simplifies it, takes away a lot of the, I guess color could be kind of distracting in this sort of situation where it's really about shape and line.
I think from a more technical reason too, because I purposely blew out, the background there. It wasn't the nicest of greens anyway. So I figured let's just, make it white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but all the lines of the lumber and the timbers of the bridge there all become this neat graphical element surrounding them. Nice. Now, was that just like, okay, you guys just start walking that way. I'm going to stand back here and take pictures.
Yep, absolutely. And we do a lot of that where it's not necessarily even, well, obviously the one walking shot, but, I kind of we do some of that a lot. Walking towards you, walking away from you, where you just, kind of capturing that moment where, again, it's something different, especially with the little ones when they can walk like that. It's fun. That classic mom and dad holding your shot or where they pull the arms up, although I don't think you're supposed to do that anymore because it hurts shoulders or whatever. But, when they're pulling the kids up real high, that's always a fun one.
But because he's trying to keep track of the toddler down there, you've got that connection again, right?
Right. And again, in this case, the toddler's the only one looking at the camera, really.
Yeah.
Same thing, mom and dad kissing the kid. And I think she's sticking her tongue out at me in that photo. That was a fun one.
So this is just okay, we're going to stand here in this, but that's kind of scouted out that location for.
Yeah, this was actually downtown Bethlehem and around the holidays and stuff like that. It's a great place to work, because really you have people decorating their houses for you. That's you don't have to worry about building a set if it's already created.
Yeah, all the set dressing is done.
Exactly. So it's just kind of taking advantage of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. You don't normally think of a family portrait of, having the family fairly small in the frame. This is really dominated by the landscape and the bridge.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's not a common thing, but, sometimes it's just, it's as a 4x6 that you're handing to grandma, it probably wouldn't be the greatest photo in the world, but to blow that up to 16x20 or 24x30 metal print, hang it in your house. I mean, it's art, it's art with your family in it, basically.
Nice.
All right. Let's see.
And again, if anybody has any questions for Matt or questions about portrait photography or questions about any of the technical stuff, please feel free to throw them in the comments and we will answer them live. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, wow.
Again, just kind of breaking down the little family groups.
Okay, so this was just so we're looking at okay, we've broken down the family groups. Now we're just doing the kids. Again, you were down at her eye level. But I like the layers that you've got going on. There's foreground stuff and there's background stuff, and she's sitting there in the middle.
Yeah, it's all, like I said, it's all about trying to find where you're at and just kind of create that moment. Even you don't need to be in the most perfect location. You know what I mean? In this case, it was literally a couple pieces of grass and a flower, and it ended up being an amazing photo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that could just be some weeds out in a field someplace. You don't know.
Right. I mean, this was on a picnic table at a playground. I mean, it's that moment where the kids are together, you get the shot, and, it's to have all the cousins together like that and everybody smiling, looking at the camera. Yeah, it was fun. It was great. But, they said Christmas morning when the grandfather opened the portrait, it's the first time in their lives that they saw him cry, So, I mean, hey, I did my job, that's what you're trying to do.
Nice. And it really is all about trying to get that connection with people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And trying to make I don't know. I feel like I've got to go practice this now. Like, what would you do? Like I want to try working on this, but I'm almost not quite sure where to begin with. Like, I don't know. We'll see if my nephew likes my jokes, I guess.
That's, honestly, you always want to have a good list of dad jokes in your back pocket, because you never know when they're going to come in handy. But yeah, I mean, you're every crowd's a little different. Every client's a little different. Every family's a little different. So it's just that matter of being able to, identify what kind of sense of humor this family has, or, like I said, you can always pick out that one family member that's the easy one to pick on. Or, even if you're like working with kids, like I said, getting down to their level, physically and mentally, being able to connect with them. And, a lot of photo shoots and stuff like that, when you're with the kids, the first couple minutes is nothing to do with taking photos. It's, talking to the kids and, complimenting, like, oh, I love your outfit. That's a great, or I like your shoes. They light up. And then suddenly, like, the kids are like, oh yeah, I got light up shoes. Let me show them off for you. And it just changes the whole vibe. If you start right into it with like, okay, everyone stand over here and look at me and do this, like, people are going to turn you off instantly. You really got to just make that connection. And the first couple minutes, like, especially when working with kids, it's just playing with them, just getting them comfortable to you. You are a stranger. Well, I mean, unless it's a family member, but still, it's something they're not used to.
Right.
Working in a studio environment, a lot of times, like, kids have that fear of, like, it's almost like a doctor's office to them, because it's just, a sterile looking room with bright lights and things like that. And there's a stranger there with weird looking machines. It could be a little intimidating for a child. So, you got to make them relax and have fun with it. And again, as like, the time progresses and, in the digital age, it's nice that you can, I don't want to say spray and pray type of photography, but, you definitely have to snap off a lot of shots, especially when you're working with a large group, because, you're going to have a blink in there somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I try not to count stuff off, especially when I'm working with big groups, because, if you say, all right, here we go on 3, 1, 2, 3, everybody's going to blink on 3. So you learn to, like, say 1, 2, take the picture on 2, and then say 3. Which is, something I do often, but it's more or less just trying to capture that moment and making sure that you have it. And like I said, get the boring ones out of the way first, and then go into the fun stuff. And then,
yeah, I like that.
Once you have that fun stuff and it's nice and relaxed, you can go back to the boring stuff if you have to.
Right. Like so you start off with the boring stuff, and then you can do some fun stuff. And then, like, maybe everybody's kind of burnt off a little energy a little bit.
Right.
And you can come back to that group portrait, but maybe they've loosened up some.
Right. It's kind of like so in my early days, I did a lot of photojournalism for newspapers and stuff like that. And, when you first arrive at an event or a scene or something like that, like, one of the first things you do is you take your wide angle shot. So if you get nothing else from that point, you still have the story of what's going on. And then you can start zooming in and finding the specific stories within a story and putting on your telephoto lens and getting a little bit closer. And it's kind of the same thing with family photography. You start off and we got the family photo. We got it. Great. Awesome. Now let's start looking for the little individual families and the little individual groups and the small connections and things like that, where you have the 2 cousins that are rolling around in the grass having a good time, or, things like that,
And so, speaking of outfits, Matt, do you recommend to tell the families to coordinate their outfits for the shoot?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if it's a shoot that you are planning as the purpose of a photography shoot, I definitely go through a whole list of ideas for outfits and things like that. Generally, if you're on an outdoor location, even with a simple background, it's still going to be a little busy. So, I always recommend simple outfits, natural colors, nothing too crazy or bright, unless everybody's in crazy and bright, then it's okay. Obviously you kind of want people to be wearing clothes that they're comfortable in, clothes that they're going to be able to move in, and clothes that match what they normally would wear normal. In this case, it was the kids all were Eagles fans. So, that was a no-brainer. But, you want everybody to look like they belong. Even in terms of like, the family where they were downtown Bethlehem, they were a little bit dressy, a little bit nice, but they match the environment. It's a little dressy town and it looks good,
But it
again,
still looks kind of natural on them, like maybe just a slightly dressed up version of what they would normally wear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, simple colors, simple, no patterns. Even in this one, she had like a little bit of like a palm tree design on her dress. And it is kind of a little distracting now that, now that I pointed it out, you probably notice it. But again, here, like just simple colors, boys in blue, girls in pink.
What I noticed though is that because she's got her hands up there, it kind of breaks up that palm tree that's on her dress,
Right.
and your eye doesn't go to it as much.
Right. Right. And that's like one of the little things that like I notice because I'm looking at it for that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. The other thing I'm noticing is that all these people that you've got outdoors aren't wearing like dark green against the dark green trees of the background.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely want colors that are going to stand out from, you don't want to blend in. It's not like, you don't want to be out there in camouflage. Generally speaking, like if one person's in dark, you kind of want everybody in dark colors. If one person's in a light color, you want everybody in kind of light colors. In this case, we kind of picked a palette of blues and whites and things like that. This is an example of, outfits, it was more of their individual personalities, and that worked out perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Now, I mean, if it's a family picnic, you don't really get to pick what people are wearing, but you could maybe sort of pose them in such a way that if somebody's got like a super loud shirt on, maybe they're not right there in the front row.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one thing, especially when you're photographing a group or just photography in general, is you're always trying to hide the flaws. And you want people to look good. And I mean, that's part of what we're doing with portrait work. We want people to enjoy their photo. So you definitely want to try to, pose certain positions to hide flaws and things like that. Like for example, even just the way that they're standing sometimes, like for, the women, you never want them standing straight shouldered square because it give them a little bit of a twist because it, thins them out and they like that. And, the dads tend to like want to be a little bit more bulky so they could stand straighter, but little things like that you're trying to, after you do your general pose, like you get everybody set up in position. I kind of have this little thing, like before I snap the photo, I always start from the top and I work my way down. So like, after I get everybody where I kind of like them and everything's ready to go, like first thing I do is quick look, make sure, hair's out of everybody's face and you don't have anything like that. And then, move down, make sure your shirt's okay and everything looks good there. And then you're, moving down, feet position, making sure there's no gaps between people. Especially when you're posing a large group, you don't want those gaps in between. You want everyone to look nice and close and as possible.
All right. So then it would wind up looking like there's a chunk of people who are for some reason separate from everybody else.
Right. Or even just, like a big gaping hole in the center of the photo where it's, you could see through to the background. But it's just kind of like a mental checklist, that you just comes with time and practice where you're looking for those little things. And, if you do see something, then it's real quick. Again, be specific to who you're talking to. Uncle Joey, fix your collar real quick. Or, Aunt Sarah, move your hair out of your face real quick. Or, and the more you do it, the more practice you get at it, you're going to start noticing like the details are just going to becoming more and more details. Like next thing you know, you're going to be like, oh, turn your necklace around. I can see the clasp in the front. So, little things like that you're just going to start picking up on. And yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. The more you practice, the better you'll be.
Right. So I shouldn't feel terrible about that if I completely miss all that stuff to start with. This is really going to
absolutely not. There's so much going on. I mean, it's like trying to do like 50 algebraic, problems at once. Like, I mean, you're thinking about the technical aspect of the photography. You're thinking about your lighting. You're thinking about your positioning of their poses. And then, on top of that, one of the kids is trying to run away and hug a dog. And, Uncle Joey's looking off at the ribs because he really wants to eat and things. So it's so, yeah, there's a lot to do.
Right.
You got to be positive. You got to have patience. And again, going back
Right.
to the making it fun, you have to have fun with it, because especially when you're working with large groups with kids, it's never going to go the way you want. So you really just have to kind of shrug it and just enjoy what you're having. And when everybody starts laughing because it's not going the right way, those are the best photos. Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. So making it fun for yourself in the process of making it fun for everybody else, because I'm sure that's going to be reflected in, like, they're going to pick up on that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you look stressed, they're going to be stressed. You can't, as a photographer, everything looks great. Everything's going great. It really is, it's acting. I mean, there's times where, you're sweating and having a minor panic attack, and, but to them, hey guys, you're doing an awesome job. This is great. But
as they say, like, kind of like a duck, like gliding along smoothly on the surface of the water, but underneath,
legs
feet are just going like crazy.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely like that. But again, like I said, if you look calm and composed and ready to go, and having a good time, they're going to be the same way. And I think, like, especially when it comes to kids, like, I've seen situations where, it's easy for parents to get frustrated because the kids aren't paying attention or aren't listening and stuff. And, it's up front with them before the session even begins. I let them know, hey, like, listen, we're going to play for a little bit. I want to get them used to me. And, if they're not cooperating, don't worry about it, because we're going to make that work to our advantage. Like, one little trick is parents always try to bribe their kids. Never let a parent bribe their kid with anything to get a photo, because that kid knows exactly how far they could push their parent to get. So if mom offers like a lollipop, that kid's holding out till they get the full McDonald's Happy Meal. If you have to bribe, let the photographer do the bribing, because that kid does not know how far they could push me. So when I offer a lollipop, or in most cases, as you say, you want a surprise, and they're good to go. Because they're not going to miss out on the surprise.
That's amazing.
So little things like that, but then make sure you can back it up. So if you're a photographer, make sure you have a couple lollipops in your bag ready to go. Okay.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I personally have picked up a ton from this. I hope our viewers tonight have learned a few things, and I think it's definitely time for us to go and try some stuff out there. I know I've got a few family events coming up this summer that have been long delayed, and I'm looking forward to getting out there.
It's going to be nice to get together with people again. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And have fun and take some photos.
Yeah, and the photos come second, right? Like, first of all, get out there and enjoy yourself and have fun with these people that you probably haven't seen in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, everybody who tuned in tonight. We will be back in 2 weeks, and next time we're going to be talking about street photography. That's a topic we've had a lot of discussion on. Should be a good time. And until then, if you have questions or comments for the show, you can leave comments below in the little box, and we will see you again real soon. Night, everybody.
Good night.